He used the same password for the coffee machine, his calendar, and the corporate garage, and I was the only one who noticed. That silly little sequence of taps opened more doors than his vice president badge ever could. I didn't need to know the exact letters. All I needed was the rhythm of his fingers. Tap, tap, pause, tap. Griffin Vale, our new VP with the perfect teeth and rehearsed smile, carried that rhythm everywhere. At the coffee machine. On the keypad outside Sequoia. On the reservation tablet for the garage Tesla. One man. One password. A metronome of carelessness ticking through the office halls. Our fluorescent lights buzz like anxious bees, filling the gray cubicles with static. I sit among them like furniture, ignored, necessary, never admired. My name is Macy Hart. Officially, project coordinator. Unofficially, cartographer of forgotten corners. I know the supply closet lock sticks unless you push down first. I know the badge reader at the side door lags just over a second. I know the server room vent that exhales warm plastic dust when the backups finish at 2 a.m. People don't see me, but I see everything. Griffin arrived in June with a suitcase full of buzzwords, quick wins, leverage synergies, lean into. His office, glass walls, too cold, with staged books no one's opened. When he struts past the open floor, voices hush. He thinks it's respect. We know it's survival instinct. At 9:07 on a Monday, he drifted into my stand-up and gently pushed me aside like a pop-up ad. Our new plan, he announced, unveiling my phased rollout as if it had sprung from his shiny head. The team nodded. I nodded. In glass-walled conference rooms, resistance looks like bad theater. Later, I watched him order coffee. Same rhythm. Tap, tap, pause, tap. The machine chirped, billing the developer's subscription. His badge blinked green. Convenient when everything's synced, he said, smirking. Convenient, sure. But convenience leaves receipts. That night, my kitchen table became a war room. I unrolled my paper map of the building, hallways and pen, X's on quirks, supply closet, lagging badge door, dusty print server nook. Next to them, arrows for budget flows, crowns for shadow admins, dotted lines for integrations nobody owns. I'm not a hacker. I'm an archivist of oversight. Power isn't the nameplate on a glass door. It's the list of permissions that get renewed in silence. I circled his name, Griffin Vale. Beside it, one pattern, many doors. In office legend, that's a comfortable password. In audit language, a liability waiting for a signature. The next day, I slipped into the server room on the excuse of needing a cable. Cold air bit my ankles. Fans hissed like they were whispering secrets. On the inside of a cabinet, a stack of forgotten printouts, admin lists for coffee, for parking, for meeting room access. And Griffin's name, bobbing up like a cork where it didn't belong through assistant accounts, VIP overrides, shared access pools no one had cleaned up in years. Not hacking. Vanity. Negligence. And then the door opened. He walked in. A VP in a server room looks as out of place as a swan in a mechanic's bay. He didn't acknowledge me, perfect. Furniture doesn't talk. He walked to a locked drawer and tapped it open. Tap, tap, pause, tap. The same rhythm. The same arrogance. Back at my cubicle, I opened my private notebook. I drew the rhythm, the systems, the logs it would leave behind, badge swipes, API calls, billing records. If he wanted to play the same 4 notes everywhere, I'd be the one writing the sheet music for the auditors. That evening, when the office had thinned and the exit signs buzzed like mosquitoes, I opened my calendar and created a private event. Quarterly access reconciliation draft. Attendees, me. Description, coincidences aren't a bug. They're a signal. And I smiled because Griffin Vale had just given me his. The first time I realized Griffin's carelessness wasn't just sloppy but dangerous, I was standing in the coldest room in the building. Most people avoid the server room. Too noisy, too cold, too much tangled cable that looks like it might bite. For me, it's a refuge. The hum of fans drowns out small talk, and the sharp smell of plastic and dust is more honest than half the conversations in strategic alignment meetings. I'd slipped in with my favorite excuse, checking for a laminated HDMI cable. Nobody ever questions that. They just nod, grateful I volunteered for a chore they don't understand. I wasn't looking for cables, of course. I was looking for paper. Forgotten paper is the best kind. Contracts left on printers, post-it stuck to monitors, access lists taped inside cabinet doors. And there it was, a fat sheaf of printouts shoved into a cabinet labeled logistics. I flipped through. Admin assignments for the corporate coffee system. Supervisor rights for meeting rooms. Parking garage access privileges. And in every stack, his name bobbed up. Vale Griffin. Not where you'd expect it, never directly as an admin. No, he hid behind proxy roles, permissions borrowed from assistants, VIP guest overrides, or bundled groups of rights meant to be temporary. A shortcut through laziness and ego. It wasn't malicious. It was worse, entitlement without consequence. Then the door hissed open. My stomach dropped. Because Griffin Vale himself stepped inside. A vice president in the server room is like a peacock in a machine shop, wrong animal, wrong habitat. He didn't even glance at me, which was good. Furniture doesn't deserve eye contact. He strolled to a locked drawer, and I watched his hand. Tap tap, pause tap. The same rhythm I'd seen on the coffee machine. The same beat on the meeting room panel. The same careless pattern again. He opened the drawer, glanced inside, and left. No words. Just the rhythm echoing in my ears. When the door shut, I exhaled so hard the fans nearly carried it away. Back at my cubicle, I pulled out the notebook I never leave in the office. Inside were diagrams of hallways, contract flows, and badge timelines. I added a new entry, Vale, recurring pattern across systems. Expected audit trails, badge swipes, API logins, billing events. If he wanted to treat the same 4 taps like a master key, fine. I would be the one making sure someone noticed. Later that afternoon, I sat in a meeting he hijacked again. Orchid conference room. Whiteboard squeaks, stale pastry crumbs on the table, my project plan glowing on the screen. He cut me off halfway through, launched into his vision, and stamped his name across my hours of labor. Nobody questioned him. Glass walls make rebellion look theatrical, and everyone wants job security more than truth. But I noticed something else that day. His arrogance was growing. Each time he stole credit, he pressed harder, louder, more certain the room belonged to him. And the more careless he got, the more visible his fingerprints became. That night at home, I sat at my kitchen table with the map spread wide. Coffee cup rings stained the edges. I added arrows. Coffee system billing logs finance. Garage reservations timestamps security feeds. Meeting room access badge panel IT audit trail. It was like connecting subway lines on a city map. His rhythm was the train. And I was building the schedule that would catch it. I didn't need his password. I just needed to let the system do what it was designed to do, notice. All I had to do was give it a little nudge. Griffin didn't just take credit for my work. He learned how to make the theft sound like generosity. It started in Orchid, during our bi-weekly status sync. My slides were up on the big screen, color-coded, precise. I'd rehearse the flow, dependencies, risk register, budget burn. But the second I opened my mouth, he leaned forward with a smile that could have been carved from an HR brochure. Macy's team has done great work here, he said, voice smooth as the glass walls around us. We've been exploring some adjustments, and here's how we plan to accelerate. He strolled to the screen, clicked through 3 of my prepared slides, and rephrased them in the easy cadence of someone who hadn't stayed up until 1:43 a.m., reconciling vendor invoices. Around the table, heads nodded. No one wanted to interrupt the VP's flow. Even the intern scribbled his words like commandments. By the time he finished, my name was gone. My project was his strategy. And the room left convinced that Griffin Vale had invented foresight itself. I sat there, smiling politely, my pen tapping the table in my own rhythm. Not tap tap, pause tap, but a different one. The beat of patience. Because I knew something Griffin didn't. Stolen credit leaves traces too. Later that week, the break room hummed with microwaves reheating leftover noodles. I watched him again. Coffee machine. Tap tap, pause tap. Foam. Green badge blink, smirk. Same pattern. Busy week, he said, as if we were co-conspirators instead of victim and thief. Big eyes on us Monday. Got to make sure we shine. Us. He was fluent in the language of collective ownership, as long as the collective meant me doing the work and him doing the talking. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Monday meant the steering committee meeting. Steering committee meant minutes. Minutes meant an official record. And official records had a funny habit of revealing inconsistencies when cross-checked against access logs. If Griffin wanted to keep putting my slides in his mouth, fine. I'd make sure the system documented every place his password touched, every meeting he barged into, every we he turned into me. That night, my apartment was quiet except for the hum of my fridge and the scratch of my pen across the building map. I drew another dotted line, conference room logins linked to Griffin's proxy role repeated pattern. Then I added a note in block letters, minutes plus audit trail equals evidence. The plan wasn't to shout or argue or call him out in the moment. That would only make me look defensive, fragile, replaceable. No, the plan was to let the system speak for me. Paper, logs, and signatures. The things executives can't argue with, no matter how smooth their voices. Monday came. Steering committee. Long oak table, glossy finish, water bottles sweating rings onto coasters. Griffin opened with his usual pageant smile. He presented my project as his shining vision. He waved his hand like a conductor. As you can see, the adjustments we made have positioned us for success. I sat silently, the smile fixed on my face. Because what he didn't realize was that the access system had already logged him entering the Orchid meeting room 47 minutes earlier, using the same rhythm, the same password, the same proxy role. That timestamp would align perfectly with the moment my slides were uploaded. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a breadcrumb. And I was already collecting the trail. The best revenge isn't fast. It's patient. It's documented. And Griffin Vale had just volunteered to be my favorite case study. Every building has levers. Some are obvious, light switches, badge readers, thermostats. Others hide in binders, tucked between policies no one reads until it's too late. The audit process was my favorite lever. It starts innocently, quarterly reviews of who has what access. Boring, bureaucratic, tedious. Exactly why most executives ignore it. Which is why I knew Griffin Vale would. And ignoring an audit is like ignoring a smoke alarm. It doesn't stop the fire. It just makes you look guilty when the neighbors smell smoke. That Thursday, I slipped into the compliance archive, a forgotten room behind HR that smelled of lemon cleaner and stale paper. Rows of binders leaned like tired soldiers. I knew exactly where to look. Access Reconciliation, FI 2021-2023. Each binder heavy enough to double as a doorstop. I flipped through pages of signatures, initials, highlighted exceptions. Patterns jumped out the way they always do when you know what to look for. Griffin's name. Again and again, tacked onto roles he shouldn't hold. Sometimes through executive override, sometimes because someone had lazily copied VP access from his predecessor without pruning. A mess of shortcuts masquerading as entitlement. I pulled my phone, snapped quiet photos under the fluorescent buzz. Not to post, not to share. Just to connect the dots later at my kitchen table with the map sprawled wide. Meanwhile, Griffin was growing bolder. In the next team meeting, he interrupted me so smoothly it almost sounded polite. Macy's brought us this far, he said, smiling at me like a mentor in a commercial. Now let me show you how we're taking it to the next level. He clicked to the next slide, my data. He spoke in that confident, lilting tone that executives practice in mirrors. Around the table, the team scribbled notes, nodded eagerly. I let my expression stay neutral. Because the more he performed, the more rope he gave me. What he didn't notice, the system was already logging everything. Every slide upload tied to his proxy role. Every meeting room entry stamped with his recycled password. Every coffee machine purchase misbilled to the wrong department. He thought he was polishing his reputation. I knew he was leaving an audit trail that could shine brighter than any PowerPoint. That night at home, I lined up the pieces. Audit records. Binder photos. Badge logs. Meeting minutes. I drew arrows like a detective linking suspects on a wall. My kitchen light cast long shadows across the paper, and I thought, this is what power actually looks like. Not the VP title. Not the corner glass office. Power is knowing how the system really works. I added a note in the corner. Next step, seed anomalies. Because an audit doesn't move on its own. You have to nudge it awake, like tapping a sleeping guard dog with a stick. My nudge would be simple. A request for clarification. A harmless email, phrased in bureaucratic politeness, asking why certain permissions seemed to overlap. It wouldn't accuse. It wouldn't point fingers. It would just drop a pebble into still water and let the ripples spread. The next morning, while Griffin was busy showing off his vision in the glass conference room, I drafted the email in my cubicle. Short. Neutral. Nothing emotional. To compliance. Subject, clarification request. Hi, I noticed overlapping access roles tied to executive accounts. Seems inconsistent with the Q3 policy binder. Can you confirm expected structure? Thanks. Macy Hart. I read it twice. It looked harmless. Disposable. Forgettable. Exactly what made it powerful. I hit send. And, just like that, the lever moved. The first reply to my harmless email came at 7:42 a.m. the next day. Not from compliance, but from Jenna in information security. Subject line, following up on your note. Inside, a short sentence that made me smile. Good catch. We'll look into this. Keep it quiet. That was the thing about systems. They seem like endless bureaucracy, but inside them are people like Jenna, tired, underpaid, but sharp enough to notice when a red flag waves. All they need is someone willing to point at it. I minimized the email and looked across the floor. Griffin Vale was already in his glass office, waving his hands over a conference call like a game show host. From this distance, I couldn't hear his words. I didn't need to. His body language said enough. This is my show, my project, my empire. What he didn't know, while he was busy performing, the gears of the audit machine had begun to turn. Slowly, quietly, but inevitably. By noon, IT sent out a bland announcement, routine access reconciliation scheduled. Expect badge revalidation and role review requests over the next 2 weeks. Most employees sighed, ignored it, or cursed the inconvenience. I knew better. This was the first ripple. Badge revalidation meant Griffin's recycled password would be cross-checked. Role reviews meant someone would stumble across his tangle of proxy accounts. And all I had to do was wait. Meanwhile, Griffin got bolder. In the afternoon meeting, he didn't just hijack my slide deck, he cut me off mid-sentence. Let me handle this, Macy, he said with that patronizing grin. Then he pitched my risk mitigation plan as if he'd scribbled it on a napkin over lunch. The room laughed at his little jokes. They wrote down his words. They didn't see me. Perfect. Because I didn't need the spotlight. I needed him to stay comfortable, arrogant, unguarded. The more he strutted, the more obvious the trail he left behind. That evening, I stayed late under the buzz of half-dead fluorescent lights. The office smelled like reheated soup and burnt coffee. I walked past Griffin's glass office, empty now, chair tilted back like a throne waiting for its king, and slipped into the maintenance closet across the hall. Inside, dust, mops, lemon cleaner, the low hum of the fuse box. It was my hiding place, the one spot where no one looked. I opened my notebook, flipped to the new page. At the top, ripple log. 7:42 a.m. Jenna acknowledges. 12:07 p.m. IT sends announcement. 2:16 p.m. Griffin hijacks meeting, more aggressive tone. 6:43 p.m. Maintenance closet review, planning. I underline the last note. Planning. Because ripples don't just spread, they collide. And when they do, the wave gets bigger. At home that night, I spread the binder photos across my kitchen table. Arrows connected access lists to budget codes, codes to names, names to signatures. Griffin's name glowed like neon on the page, appearing where it shouldn't, absent where it should. I didn't need to accuse him. The system would do it for me. All I had to do was make sure the right anomalies aligned at the right time. And thanks to one short email, the current was already flowing in that direction. The next morning, Griffin greeted me in the hall with a self-satisfied grin. Big meeting today, he said, tapping his notebook. We've got to shine. We. Always we. I smiled back, polite and quiet. Because if he thought the stage lights were on him, he was right. Only he didn't know they weren't stage lights. They were searchlights. And soon, the system would aim them directly at him. By the end of the week, the system was awake. It began with small things, batch pings. Every time someone swiped into a meeting room, the logs cross-referenced the access matrix. Normally, no one reads those logs unless there's a security incident. But when the audit process kicks in, the software starts flagging anomalies. Overlaps. Inconsistencies. Duplications. I didn't have to guess what would show up. I already knew. Griffin Vale's name lit up in places it didn't belong. Conference rooms he didn't technically manage. Vehicle reservations tied to departments he didn't control. And the best part? The coffee machine subscriptions. Every single cappuccino charged to the wrong budget created a neat, time-stamped breadcrumb. And all of it was quietly landing in Jenna's lap. On Tuesday afternoon, she passed my desk with 2 coffees in hand. Set one down for me. Don't say a word, she murmured, eyes on her phone. Then, softer, but you weren't wrong. That was all. She didn't need to say more. Across the floor, Griffin was in his glass box, gesturing through a video call. His voice carried faintly, execution, velocity, alignment. The kind of jargon you can rearrange 100 ways without ever meaning anything. People nodded. They always nodded. But behind the curtain, the system had stopped nodding. It was highlighting, underlining, circling. I played my part carefully. The trick was not to push too hard. If you scream, people cover their ears. But if you whisper into the right channel, the echo grows on its own. So I added another whisper. Late at night, I submitted a ticket routine anonymous. Possible overlap between executive proxy accounts and departmental billing. Please review. Nothing accusatory. Just a question dressed as housekeeping. By morning, IT had flagged it under investigation. Another anomaly logged. Another ripple. Meanwhile, Griffin escalated his performance. At Wednesday's meeting, he interrupted me before I'd even finished my second sentence. What Macy's getting at, he said, cutting me cleanly, is that we've already implemented a better solution. Then he clicked through my slide deck like it was his own diary. The team clapped. They actually clapped. I smiled politely, writing in the margin of my notes, the higher the pedestal, the harder the fall. Because every clap was another ounce of weight added to his ego. And when the system finally tipped, all that weight would drag him down faster. Back home, I traced the map on my kitchen table with a fingertip. My arrows now formed a web. Coffee, billing, anomaly, finance. Meeting rooms, badge logs, IT. Garage reservations, vehicle pool compliance. All paths converged on one name, Griffin Vale. I didn't need to confront him. I didn't even need to be in the room. The system was already building the case for me, piece by piece, log by log. But I also knew the system was slow. It liked to chew, not bite. If I wanted the collapse to be timed right, visible, undeniable, I'd have to keep feeding it anomalies until the trail was too fat to ignore. And so the game began, one anomaly at a time. Each breadcrumb carefully placed. Each pebble dropped into the pond. I wasn't sabotaging him. I was just making sure the system finally noticed what was always there. And Griffin Vale, with his one-size-fits-all password, was the easiest anomaly I'd ever played with. The day he promised to cover me, I made sure I was nowhere near the blast radius. Griffin said it in passing, palm on the glass door of Sequoia, voice warm like a fake blanket. Don't worry, Macy, I'll cover you in the steering committee. Translation: I'll talk over you and borrow your lungs for oxygen. Fine. Let him perform. I had a different part to play: absence. Alibis are underrated in offices. People think you need presence to prove value. I prefer timestamps. So I built myself a clean calendar, no shadows, no overlaps, nothing that could later be read as meddling. At 8:03 a.m., I badged into the supply annex 2 floors down to assist with inventory. At 8:05, I texted Tomas from facilities a photo of the pallet scale reading 47. 3 pounds. At 8:11, the annex camera caught me carrying a box of Ethernet couplers like I was moving house. My badge pings wrote the story for me. Macy was in the annex, in the dust, not anywhere near executive toys. Upstairs, Griffin preened. I could see him through the glass when I came up for coffee, chin lifted, sleeves rolled, that Coach of the Year stance. He had no idea the coffee portal had just shipped its monthly roll-up to finance, $189. 00 for the developer's subscription, with a fresh spike, $58. 20, tied to his badge ID over the last 5 days. Cappuccinos taste better when someone else pays, but cost centers have long memories. I timed my refill to watch him order. Tap tap, pause, tap. The brass nozzle hissed like a tired snake, and the machine beeped gratitude. Big deck this afternoon, he told the room, not me. We're going to wow them. We? Of course. On my way back to the annex, I stopped by Priya's desk, the project analyst who takes the minutes no one reads until they become evidence. I set down a paper bag. Blueberry real berries, not the purple kind, I said. Priya grinned. I owe you, she murmured. If you need the draft minutes fast, say the word. I didn't say it. I didn't have to. The blueberry economy runs on reciprocity. Back in the annex, the lights buzzed low and yellow, the kind that make dust look like snow. I perched on a crate, opened my notebook, and drew the circle tighter. Coffee finance, meeting rooms IT, garage compliance. In the margin, I wrote, minutes legal language. Priya's drafts always captured exact phrasing, who said we, who claimed my. Words matter when the audit microscope arrives. By lunch, Jenna swung by the annex to check a power strip. She didn't look at me when she spoke. People walking past heard only hardware. Heads up, she said. Compliance is scheduling an executive access walkthrough. Not public yet. My pulse flicked once, steady again. Anything you need from me? I asked, staring at a bucket. No, she said. Just keep being furniture. Alibi maintained. I climbed the back stairwell, the one that smells like old raincoats, to avoid creating extra badge pings, then cut through the maintenance corridor to my cube. On my screen, a meeting popped up like a polite ghost. Access reconciliation prep. Draft. Optional. Harmless. Scheduled for the same hour as Griffin's steering committee. I wouldn't attend either. I'd be off-site in the annex, checking the labeler that prints QR code sideways. 2 things happened at 2 p.m. First, Griffin opened the steering committee with our progress. Priya's fingers flew. As I've led this initiative, click, we decided to restructure the phases, click, my team has aligned on velocity. The words landed neat as pushpins on a corkboard. Second, IT kicked off badge revalidation. Executives first, to minimize disruption. Which meant Griffin received an automated prompt mid-meeting, the kind with a gray banner and a legal line about consent to monitoring. He swatted the laptop like a fly. Ignore that, he said, and clicked through without reading. Tap tap, pause, tap. The panel in Sequoia logged his door entry 30 minutes earlier with the same rhythm. The coffee machine pinged the dev budget 12 minutes after that. The system doesn't gossip, but it does keep score. At 3:17, Priya swung by my cube with a conspiratorial whisper. Draft minutes in your inbox if you like reading drafts. I thanked her. I did like reading drafts. Especially ones that timestamped his claims to the minute. I kept my face neutral until after 5, when the office thinned and the exit signs hummed their mosquito song. In the maintenance closet, the lemon cleaner bit the air. I opened the notebook and logged the day. 8:03 to 11:54, Annex alibi, camera plus batch. 12:28, Jenna's whisper, executive walkthrough pending. 2 o'clock, steering committee, verbatim claims captured. 2 o'clock, exec badge revalidation issued, Vail dismisses prompt. 2:12, coffee charge hits dev budget, $4.85, foam art optional. 3:17, draft minutes received. Every entry had a partner somewhere else, photo, ping, email, log. That's how you build a case without ever raising your voice, duets of evidence. On my way out, I passed Griffin's glass aquarium. He was alone, practicing his smile at his reflection, angling the notebook so the words "our plan" faced the door like a brand. Not for long, I thought. Plans are just stories with consequences. He caught my eye and gave that manager's half salute. Appreciate you, Macy. I'll make sure your part is recognized. You already have, I said, and kept walking, the server room chill still in my bones and a calm certainty settling in my chest. Tomorrow, the walkthrough dates would land on calendars like snow. And when the drift piled up, I'd be standing outside it, dry as a bone, while his footprints told the whole tale. By now, the system was humming like a hive, and Griffin didn't even hear the buzzing. The executive walkthrough had been announced, calendars blocked, reminders scheduled, compliance reps sharpening pencils. Most people groaned at the thought of digging up old permissions. Griffin smirked like it was all beneath him. It's just paperwork, he told the team, waving a hand. We'll breeze right through. We. Always we. I let him believe it. Paperwork was his blind spot. He didn't understand that paperwork was where the real battles happened, the signatures, the initials, the audit trails that could sink a career faster than any performance review. That week, he grew reckless. In the Monday sync, he cut me off so aggressively even the intern glanced at me with an apologetic wince. What Macy meant, Griffin said, is that we've already aligned this with my vision. My vision. He spoke with the gravity of a man who thought ideas bent around him like planets. The truth was simpler. His vision was just my work with a fresh coat of arrogance. But arrogance makes a louder noise than effort, and the room nodded along. Fine. Let them nod. Because the louder he got, the more obvious his fingerprints became. I spent evenings tightening my web. In my apartment, the map stretched wider, now covered in sticky notes. Each anomaly was a threat. Coffee charges misbilled. Conference rooms entered on proxy rolls. Garage reservations stamped under departments he didn't own. Each thread pulled toward the same center, Griffinvale. But I wasn't just collecting. I was shaping. Aligning anomalies so that when the walkthrough came, they'd collide in plain sight. No one could call it coincidence if every log, every minute, every budget entry pointed the same direction. It was less like setting a trap and more like arranging mirrors. He'd walk in thinking he was the star, and instead he'd see his reflection multiplied across every wall. Jenna passed by my desk midweek. She didn't stop, didn't smile, didn't break stride. Just dropped a folded note by my keyboard as if it were scrap. You're not the only one watching. I tucked it under my notebook, heart steady. It meant the audit team was circling closer. It meant my whispers had reached the right ears. And it meant that soon, the system would take over. By Thursday, Griffin was bragging about the walkthrough. This'll be quick, he said, loud enough for the whole floor to hear. Executives always get cleared first. Perks of the job. Perks, yes. Immunity, no. He didn't know that the coffee machine alone had already billed him for $246. $50 this quarter, none of it under his department. He didn't know that his badge logs painted him as the phantom administrator of rooms he shouldn't touch. He didn't know that Priya's meticulous minutes lined up perfectly with his unauthorized access. He thought paperwork was boring. I thought paperwork was destiny. And destiny was about to arrive in the form of a clipboard, a checklist, and a polite request for him to walk us through your access. I sharpened my own pencil, ready to take notes. Because I knew something he didn't. In audits, confidence isn't protection. Confidence is camouflage, and camouflage fails under a spotlight. The trap was set. The timing perfect. The web tightened. And that's when the unexpected started. The walkthrough was supposed to start at 9 o'clock sharp. Clipboards. Laptops. Polite faces. I'd arranged everything so Griffin's coincidences would glow under the fluorescent lights like neon arrows. At 8:43, my inbox pinged. Subject line, reschedule, audit postponed. I blinked. Read again. The entire executive walkthrough was moved out 2 weeks due to competing priorities. My stomach tightened. 2 weeks in audit speak might as well be 2 years. Priorities shift, evidence fades, anomalies get smoothed over by administrative exceptions. Griffin could walk free, untouched, because somebody higher up decided the paperwork could wait. For the first time in months, I felt the map on my kitchen table sag in my mind. All those lines, arrows, breadcrumbs, threatened by nothing more than a calendar shuffle. I stared at Griffin through the glass of his office. He was laughing on a call, feet propped on the desk, tie loosened like a hero after the battle. He hadn't even seen the postponement email yet. But when he did, I knew he'd treat it as confirmation of what he already believed, untouchable. The risk wasn't just delay. It was momentum. The longer the gap, the more likely anomalies would get patched, logs overwritten, budget errors corrected. If the spotlight didn't shine soon, all my carefully aligned mirrors would dim. At noon, Jenna cornered me in the break room. She kept her voice low, words hidden under the hiss of the coffee machine. "Not my call," she said. "Executive sponsor pulled rank. They want to streamline reviews. Might drop half of them altogether." Half. Which half? I didn't have to ask. The higher you sat, the lighter the spotlight. And Griffin had floated high on charm alone. I poured burnt coffee into a paper cup, staring at the swirl of oil on the surface. "So we're just letting it go?" Her jaw clenched. "For now. But the logs don't forget." Logs don't forget, true. But auditors do. Executives certainly do. And I couldn't let Griffin's trail fade into the background noise of later. That night, my apartment felt smaller than usual. The map covered my table, sticky notes curling at the edges. My arrows all pointed toward the audit as the moment of impact. With that moment postponed, the web sagged like a spider's net in the rain. I pressed my palms to the table, took a breath, and started rewriting. If the system wouldn't deliver him to justice on schedule, then I'd need to keep the anomalies alive, fresh, undeniable, impossible to sweep aside. I added a new column to my notes: interventions. Coffee billing, escalate to finance as a budget integrity check. Meeting room access, highlight in quarterly IT ticket review. Garage reservations, request usage reconciliation directly. No more waiting for the perfect spotlight. I'd make sure the shadows themselves pointed to him. The next morning, Griffin breezed past my cube, clapping me on the shoulder like we were co-captains. "Audit delayed," he said cheerfully. "Guess some of us are just too important to bother with red tape, huh?" His grin was wide, smug, unstoppable. I smiled back, thin as a paper cut. Inside, my pen tapped a new rhythm, not patience anymore. Urgency. Because if the audit slipped away, I'd have to drag it back on track myself. And the clock had already started. I thought the delay was bad. I hadn't imagined worse. It hit on a Wednesday afternoon, when Jenna appeared at my cube with a look I'd never seen before. Not just tired, but rattled. She didn't sit, didn't lower her voice. Just leaned in, spoke fast. "Logs are gone." 2 words. My stomach dropped. "Explain," I said, careful to keep my voice level. "Not all of them," she added quickly. "But some of the anomalies, the coffee system, a few meeting room swipes, even a vehicle reservation. Wiped. Someone pushed a batch correction. Looks clean. Too clean. A correction." I knew what that meant. Somewhere above us, someone had decided to tidy the mess. And Griffin Vale had just been handed a ghost costume, able to walk through the system without leaving footprints. That night, I stayed late, fluorescent buzz drilling into my skull. In the maintenance closet, I flipped through my notebook, tracing the web I'd built. Each anomaly depended on evidence, timestamps, receipts, logs. Without them, my map was just scribbles. At 7:26 p.m. I tried pulling copies from finance. Gone. At 7:41, I tried the meeting room scheduling system. Revised, per compliance. At 8:03, I checked garage reservations. Redacted. The trail was collapsing under my feet. I leaned against the mop sink, the smell of lemon cleaner sharp in my lungs. For the first time, I asked myself, what if he walks away clean? What if months of watching, charting, waiting ended in nothing but erased lines? The thought burned worse than coffee sludge. At home, my apartment felt hostile. The map on my table looked more like a failure than a plan. Sticky notes curled and fell. Arrows pointed to blank spaces. I wanted to rip it all down, toss it in the trash chute, and forget. But then I noticed something. Not everything had vanished. My copies, photos of binder pages, Priya's draft minutes, my Ripple log in careful handwriting, those still existed. Independent, offline, immune to executive corrections. The system's memory could be rewritten. Mine could not. The next morning, Griffin swaggered through the office, louder than usual. Audit postponed, anomalies cleared, guess we're all good, he said, voice carrying like a victory trumpet. People laughed, relieved. Nobody likes an audit, after all. They wanted it to be over, swept away. He caught my eye as he passed. Told you not to worry about details, Macy. Big picture, that's what matters. I smiled faintly, though my chest was heavy. Details are everything, I thought. But only if you can keep them alive. As he walked away, I flipped my notebook open under the desk, pressing my pen hard enough to dent the page. One word underlined twice. Survivors. Because even if the system wanted to forget, I hadn't. And if I wanted to finish this, I'd have to build a case on what I still had. The game had changed. No longer about nudging the system awake. Now it was about beating erasure. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was ahead of Griffin Vale or already 2 steps behind. The trick about deleting evidence is this: you can never delete the fact that something was deleted. By Friday morning, I'd stopped mourning the gaps in the system. Instead, I opened my notebook to the page marked survivors and began to reframe. What if the missing logs weren't weakness but weapon? After all, auditors love nothing more than a discrepancy. And nothing screams something to hide louder than neatly erased anomalies. I started with finance. Priya helped quietly with another blueberry bribe. Budget's been cleaned, she whispered, sliding a flash drive toward me. But look at the revision date. 2 weeks after the entries. Sure enough, someone had corrected charges days after they were processed. Retroactive accounting. An auditor's favorite blood in the water. Then IT. Jenna slipped me a screenshot on her phone, meeting room badge logs showing blank lines where entries should be. Cleaned, she said. But see this gap? Systems don't skip timestamps. Somebody spliced. And compliance? The garage reservations had been redacted, but the redaction note itself was public. Consolidated under executive use. Which, translated, meant we didn't want to explain why one man borrowed 3 departments' vehicles in a month. I assembled it all at my kitchen table, arrows pointing not just to Griffin's careless pattern, but now to the cleanup itself. The story had shifted. He wasn't just careless. He was protected. And protection leaves its own paper trail. The map looked different now, not anomalies, but erasures. And erasures are louder than evidence because they beg the question, why? The next week, the audit rescheduled, smaller, trimmed, but still alive. Griffin strolled in like a man expecting applause. White shirt, no tie, sleeves rolled to just the right degree of casual authority. The lead auditor asked the standard question, "Can you walk us through your current access rights?" Griffin leaned back. Sure. Pretty simple, really. Standard VP roles. Nothing unusual. And then Jenna laid a binder on the table with a quiet, deliberate thud. Inside, gaps, revision dates, redaction notes. My breadcrumbs, reassembled as a feast. Nothing unusual? She asked, eyebrows raised. Because this looks unusual. The silence was thick enough to chew. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My name wasn't on the binder, my voice wasn't in the room. But my fingerprints were on every page, invisible as dust. Griffin blustered, tried to laugh it off. Probably a clerical error. But the words didn't stick. Executives can survive arrogance. They can even survive theft. What they can't survive is the suggestion of tampering. Especially when the tampering is neat enough to look deliberate. By the end of the month, Griffin's glass office was empty. His name scraped off the door. Official story: resigned to pursue new opportunities. Unofficial truth: the system had finally seen what I'd been watching all along. And me? I was still in my cube, under the buzzing fluorescence, drawing maps no one asked for. Colleagues still nodded at me like I was furniture. Perfect. Furniture sees everything. Here's the thing I learned: being underestimated is the best cover you'll ever get. Griffin thought my silence was weakness. It was camouflage. And camouflage works best when the predator thinks you're harmless. So I'll ask you this. When was the last time someone ignored you, talked over you, or stole your credit? Did they mistake your silence for submission, or were you already sketching the map that would undo them? Because every story lives as long as it is remembered. A like is your mark on the story, and a subscription is your ticket to the next one.